Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are pleased to welcome Sam Tabar back to the program. He's the CEO of BitDigital. They just came out with Q2 earnings, and we wanted to get an update on their Ethereum strategy and outlook moving forward. Before we get into it, take a second, smash the like button, guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding shares of BitDigital and what you thought about their quarterly results. With that being said, let's get into today's interview. Okay guys, so that's right. Sam Tabar back on the program. BitDigital Q2 earnings. We're also going to be talking about outlook and strategy for the remainder of the year. This is a highly anticipated interview. Sam, thank you so much for making the time. Great to see you again.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry that I've been avoiding the interview. There's been a lot of technical reasons and frankly also cognitive overload. We spent the past year doing a lot of heavy lifting, simplifying our business, exiting Bitcoin mining, preparing WhiteFiber for its IPO, launching the ETH strategy. And now, that this heavy lifting is finally behind us and the quiet period about WhiteFiber will end around the end of this month. Our focus is very simple, just to accumulate, stake, and scale our Ethereum play, and all in the service and long-term goal of just compounding long-term shareholder value. That's always been my North Star. And I'm a very slow and steady wins the race kind of guy.
Just before Bryce starts in with the podcast, I mean, this has been quite a transition this last sort of 12, 18 months. We knew about this thought process that you had. How do you see it as it is now compared to when you were at the drawing boards thinking about what you were going to do? Has it sort of ended up exactly as you thought it was, or has there been quite a few challenges along the way?
Well, I think one of our biggest challenges early on was that the BitDigital was a narrative mess. We had, Ethereum staking, we had Ethereum on the balance sheet, we had Bitcoin mining, we had cloud, we had data centers, and some were better than others, but nobody could really understand how to value us. And so it was a difficult story to sell. And when you talk to people about it, and after a while they get excited, but not everybody has that time. So we had to simplify the story. And now BitDigital is extremely easy to understand. It's just two line items. The first line item is our Ethereum, and the second line item is WhiteFiber. Both are extremely liquid and extremely public, and there's no guessing. So we have a really great setup. So that was very important to simplify the story. And with respect to Bitcoin mining, I'm going to say some unpopular things to your audience, but I really don't believe Bitcoin mining is going to be a very good business in the future because, this is a business that cuts your profits in half every 4 years. The hash rate continues to go up. When the hash rate goes up, it's more difficult to mine Bitcoin. And it's just a real hamster wheel in terms of buying new equipment every few months just to make things more efficient. And I also believe that when Bitcoin's at about 250,000, which I think it will be one day, sovereigns, in other words, countries, are going to get into the business of mining Bitcoin. And sovereigns have access to free energy. Utility companies are not going to charge their national governments for power. So how do you compete with that? How do Bitcoin mining companies compete with that? It's kind of difficult. And so I could understand why a lot of Bitcoin miners are now looking at HPC. If you guys recall, we're actually one of the first ones, if not the first ones, to actually get into the whole HPC space. I was heavily criticized for that. And now I see everybody else trying to do the same thing. We were also the first ones to get into Ethereum. That was considered sacrilegious. And now look what's happening. And this carve out of the HPC data center business, I'm telling you right now, a lot of miners are going who have a substantial HPC business, they're going to carve it out too. And there are reasons why. The reason is there's like, for example, from a financing perspective, there are a lot of banks and lenders out there who don't want to lend to a company that has any crypto in their business. And so that is an important situation to have a standalone company that simply does HPC, where you can model out future cash flows and banks can get really comfortable in giving you cheap financing on expanding your data center business. So that's really important, and you really can't do that as a Bitcoin miner. Also, with respect to focus, it's just difficult for people to reinvent themselves as tier 3 data center developers when they were Bitcoin miners. I've mentioned this before. Bitcoin mining is like a little Vespa, and tier 3 data centers are like Lamborghinis. So it's just not the same. And I would discourage people to think that it is the same. It's just not. There's a lot of redundancy and other technical issues that are required for tier 3 data centers that Bitcoin mining just simply does not have. So, and also, I would also add that retrofitting a Bitcoin mining into a tier 3 data center is a very special skill set. Not everybody has it. My team has it. They've been doing that for the past 20 years. The Enovum transaction that we did last fall, we acquired three things last fall when we made that acquisition. We acquired a tier 3 data center, and that's what everybody thought we acquired. But what the real juice was the team. The team has been doing retrofitting for the past many years. They've done it for the likes of Amazon. They've done it for the likes of Microsoft. They've done it for themselves. They had a massive, wonderful track record in retrofitting facilities and turning them into tier 3 data centers. So that kind of experience is gold dust, and you can't just get that overnight. We also got in that acquisition a pipeline of facilities that they identified that could be tier 3 data centers. So that was a very strategic acquisition for us. But anyway, this should be about Bit Digital, not about WhiteFiber. But my whole point is that Bitcoin miners cannot really reinvent themselves overnight that quickly. And if they are successful, they're going to find themselves forced to do a carve out, to do their own IPO. I know people won't believe me, but you guys didn't believe me about Ethereum and you didn't believe me about HPC. So you'll see in a couple of years a bunch of people doing a carve out of IPOs of their HPC business, assuming they have a successful HPC business.
Hey, we believe you around here, Sam.
When you said the we, is that I'm referring to the retail community as a whole, because we certainly were behind it, and we publicized that all the way through the last 18 months.
Yeah, no, a smart move. And I think, as you say, you have been ahead of the curve, or a step ahead, so to speak. Anthony and I were just talking about your strategic decision to sell your Bitcoin, move into Ethereum, and how well timed that worked out. So speaking of some of those moves made in the last quarter here, can you give us some of the highlights from Q2? Obviously, this has been a transformational year. Everyone says that in business. This truly, in my opinion, has been a lot of operational updates in Q2 as well. So what were kind of some of the key highlights since our last visit?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Q2 was a pivotal quarter for Bit Digital. We launched, or should I say, we amplified our Ethereum Treasury strategy, because we actually launched it years ago. And we're now positioning the company to build one of the largest institutional ETH balance sheets in the public markets. That is our goal. We announced the decision to sunset our Bitcoin mining business, and we're focusing resources on ETH and staking it. We also advanced the process of preparing WhiteFiber for its IPO, which was completed in Q3. But together with those moves, that we completed the heavy lifting of transforming Bit Digital and setting the stage for the next chapter. This has been a long journey, and we finally did it. And we will harvest the benefits in the medium-term future. On the numbers side, total revenue came to about just under $26 million, which is down 11%, as we intentionally shifted away from mining. Cloud services continued to scale, generating just under 17 million in revenue. That's a 32% increase year on year. Colocation added just under 2 million compared to nothing the previous year. E-staking contributed about 400,000. As our treasury strategy grows, that's going to be a different number. Profitability improved meaningfully. We posted a net income of just under $15 million, which is about 7 cents per diluted share, compared to a loss of 12 million a year ago. Adjusted EBITDA was just under 28 million versus a loss of 3.8 million in the prior year quarter. And that was driven in part by a $27 million gain in digital assets. Our balance sheet has continued to strengthen. We ended the quarter with about $181 million of cash, which is up 95 million at year end. And as of August 11th, we hold just slightly above 120,000 ETH, and we continue to plan to scale that position. And we're just getting started in this and being a dedicated ETH company.
In terms of the balance sheet, obviously it's strong. I mean, if you take away the operating lease, there's no debt on the balance sheet at all. What sorts of levers are available to you to increase that Ethereum stack that you've impressively increased over the last few months from just over 20,000 to over 120,000? And you talked about you want to increase that further. What levers are available to you to do that?
Well, we have obviously the playbook that Mr. Michael Saylor has given us. So we'll be using a lot of financial engineering in the capital markets to basically plagiarize what he has done. I remember about almost a year ago, about 11 months ago, I was in a room with Michael Saylor. We were just meeting. We had a private meeting. I don't think he'll be too happy about me disclosing the conversation, but I will. And he just said to me straight up to my face, he said, you should get out of the Bitcoin mining business. It's terrible. I said, you're right. It is a terrible business. He goes, what should I do? He goes, you should just do what MSTR is doing. Just do what we're doing. Just like buy Bitcoin, put it on your balance sheet. I said, that's a great idea. I'll be doing that with Ethereum, however. And of course, the vibes just died. And he said, I think Ethereum, I'll quote, he's like, Ethereum is going to go to zero. I said, well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. The conversation didn't go much further after that. And I left the room. But he was wrong and I was right. Ethereum went up. People very, very much continue to call Ethereum a shit coin for a long time. And there was a time where Ethereum had a very down cyclical cycle. We just stayed the course, and we knew that, time was our friend, that people would understand that Ethereum has extraordinary technology, tokenizing equities, having all these stable coins, having all these smart contracts can rewrite the financial system. That's all stuff that Bitcoin can't do. In fact, I would say if Bitcoin and Ethereum were invented on the same day, you guys wouldn't even have heard of Bitcoin. It's just that Bitcoin had first mover advantage. And so, look, I respect Bitcoin. I was a Bitcoin miner myself. I have Bitcoin in my wallet. I think Bitcoin's amazing because it's the mother coin. But with respect to, technology, Bitcoin just can't compete or compare to Ethereum. There are more developers on Ethereum than any other blockchain. More than 50% of stable coins are built on Ethereum. The Genius Act just came out. That was just passed at Congress, including the Clarity Act that's in process. That's all tailwind for Ethereum. I know the Genius Act has provided rules about stable coins and accepting that as payment processors. So that is very important. And like I said, most stable coins are built on Ethereum. There was a time when Gary Gensler was the chair of the SEC, and he was very prejudiced against Ethereum, and he tried to even make that into, he wouldn't be clear about the rules about whether it was a security and what developers on Ethereum can do. And he launched so many investigations against developers on Ethereum. That era of Gary Gensler is now gone. We have a very, very crypto-friendly SEC chairman now. We also have a very, very friendly crypto presidential administration. In fact, Donald Trump's son keeps talking about Ethereum nonstop. It's just really interesting because you see that family back in 2020, they were debanked and they used crypto as sort of a lifesaver in many ways because they were basically debanked from financial institutions in many ways. And now what they're doing is this is my guess, but I think I'm right, is that and it's only been what, 9 months since this administration has been, online, so to speak. What they're trying to do is make sure that crypto is so deep in the DNA of the American financial institution that when this administration is done in 2028, it'll be too big to fail. It'll be impossible to separate crypto from finance in America. And so that's the goal. And obviously, it's going to be successful because look what's happened in just 9 months. Imagine 3 more years. So, Ethereum is here to stay. Ethereum is the largest blockchain that has smart contracts. It is outperforming Bitcoin. I have nothing against Bitcoin. I want to just explain this. I want to be very clear. I am not anti-Bitcoin. I hold Bitcoin. I think it's an extremely safe asset, has extremely limited supply. It is digital gold. Its competition is really gold. And I have like mad respect for Bitcoin. But you got to also look at things objectively. And Ethereum just happens to have technology that Bitcoin cannot tokenize equities. You see Robinhood now is using Ethereum to tokenize its equities. They can't use Bitcoin. Bitcoin just does not have that technology. And so the more developer activity there is on Ethereum, the higher the prices obviously go up. And a lot of very, very smart people are seeing that, like Tom Lee and Joe Lubin and so on. And so you see a lot of very, very blue chip folks, institutions going all in on Ethereum because they understand that this is truly there's a fundamental value with Ethereum and its technology. It's not just a store of value. There is actual use with Ethereum that Bitcoin simply doesn't have.
I was just going to say, for people who are unfamiliar with your background, Sam, you come from a legal background, so you've seen firsthand some of the use cases on the legal and the financial or business front here.
Yeah, I was just going back to your introduction, actually, Sam, and you weren't there's been a number of CEOs who've been effectively playing down now the Bitcoin mining and obviously moving their power towards HPC. We had Ben Gagnon on. He thinks there's 2 to 3 years left, which ties in really with the next halving. After the next halving, it's pretty much done and dusted for a lot of the public miners, unless they can access extremely cheap energy, like zero cost, like you're explaining there before. Can you give us an update on the sort of like with regards to your mining business at the moment? I know you indicated it's going to be not part of the Bit Digital going forward, but whereabouts are in terms of you used to provide operational updates, then they've stopped. I think it was 1.2 in your update in terms of exahash. Where are we now, and when do you see that sort of phasing out over the period?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And to the earlier point about my background in Ethereum, there's some context there that I should share with the audience just so that they understand where I'm coming from on that. But we can get back to that later. In connection to our existing Bitcoin mining division, we're in process of winding down our Bitcoin mining business. We'll continue to mine and convert until our hosting contracts expire. We're also exploring potential sales of these assets, but Bitcoin mining is no longer a part of our long-term business. Ethereum is where on-chain economic activity is actually happening, from stable coins to tokenize assets, to applications, and the rewards from that activity flow directly back into ETH holders. So that's really important. That's why we've reallocated resources to Ethereum. And that's where we're scaling our staking strategy, and we're deepening our participation in the ecosystem. And look, in short, we believe buying ETH today creates far better long-term returns than putting funds into mining. When you buy mining equipment and you're dealing with that equipment just depreciating in months, and you're trying to find cheap power, and you're in that hamster wheel, and the hash rate goes up, and the difficulty of mining Bitcoin continues to go up, and then the profitability of Bitcoin mining divides in half every 4 years. That's crazy. That's nuts. And so that's just those days are never gonna those days are never gonna happen. They're not coming back. I can understand why Bitcoin mining had its sun in the had its day in the sun, and the reason for that is that many years ago, not that many years ago, just 2 or 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, there weren't a lot of capital market proxies for Bitcoin. A lot of people didn't want to buy the underlying commodity, that being Bitcoin, and the hash rate wasn't that high. So the Bitcoin mining business was really interesting as a way for capital market participants to get exposure to Bitcoin in a way that was like on steroids, which was Bitcoin mining. But that era is totally behind us. The hash rate is way too high. The depreciation of this equipment is just crazy. These things become expensive paperweights in like months. It's just not worth it. And so Ethereum, there's none of this nonsense. There's no halving in Ethereum. There's no Ethereum went from proof of work to proof of stake, which was a genius move, frankly. And now there's no need to source cheap power to generate Ethereum. And it has a lot of technology, as I mentioned. My days with Ethereum actually started in 2017 when I co-founded an Ethereum company. And prior to that, I was a lawyer for a Wall Street law firm called Skadden, which is a pretty mean law firm. And then I was head of capital strategy for Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. And so I saw firsthand how the financial system makes money. And basically, you know how they make money? They make money through friction. Whenever some money is shuffled from party A to party B, there is a person in the middle called the middleman, that's the bank, and they create a little bit of friction so they could slice a little bit of money off the top whenever money is being shuffled around. That's basically the financial system. And so what Ethereum does, when I learned about Ethereum, I realized, wow, everything I've done as a lawyer and a banker for the financial system is about to blow up, because Ethereum had something called smart contracts. So whenever something happens, condition A, condition B happens, then the value just goes from one wallet to the other with no middleman, no escrow agent, nothing. And that was a revolution in blockchain. That was the whole purpose. And that really is a huge threat to the financial system, Ethereum is, because it has the ability to shuffle value around without the need for banks or a middleman or an escrow agent or even lawyers, because you could just program conditions, and once those conditions are met, the value is transferred. Can I give an example? So for example, let's say I want to raise 1 million ETH, okay? Or $1 million, for example, to raise money to develop a film. Okay, I want to develop a film, and I go around to my friends, and like, hey, I'm trying to raise $1 million. I want to make this documentary. So my friends will say, okay, listen, Sam, you raise 500,000, and when that happens, I'll send you 500,000. So what I'll do with the Ethereum blockchain is I'll create the condition. As soon as I get $500,000 worth in this particular wallet that's dedicated to making that film, my friend automatically, without asking him, that the other 500,000 will automatically transfer into the wallet as soon as the condition is met that I raise that 500,000. No lawyers, no banks. That's it. That's Ethereum. That's pretty powerful. Bitcoin can't do that. And when that happened, and when I read the white paper, I realized, okay, I should just stop being a lawyer and a banker I should just co-found an Ethereum company, and I did. And that Ethereum company made a lot of waves. It was called Fluidity. We tokenized Manhattan real estate. We were the first ones to do that. The team at Fluidity also launched a decentralized exchange, and there was a lot of news about that. And then Joe Lubin, the co-founder of Ethereum, and who happens to be the guy behind SBET, bought my company in 2020. So, I have a long history with Ethereum. I didn't just jump on the bandwagon. I understand that technology very well, and I look forward to contributing to the community of Ethereum because those guys who work on that blockchain are hardworking guys with good hearts, and I'm just really glad to finally see that Ethereum is getting its deserved attention these days.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I didn't even know that background history of your first Ethereum company. So I'm glad you shared that, Sam. Now, we want to move into obviously the Bit Digital, the Ethereum strategy here. Before we do, the elephant in the room right now, WhiteFiber, WYFI, just IPO'd, as you said here, a big change in the business, something you've been talking about for quite some time on our channel. I understand you're in a quiet period, I believe till the end of the month. I know you mentioned that on Twitter as well, or X. Are you able to tell us what is the point of this quiet period? When is it done? And another misconception or I guess question that's been circulating there, what will be done with the equity holding in WYFI or WhiteFiber under Bit Digital? Will that be dispersed to shareholders? Will that be sold off to support the Ethereum? Any detail you're able to share?
Yes, so our focus is to continue to build one of the largest ETH Treasury market in the public markets. That's clear, and we'll be doing that through very disciplined accumulation and potential non-dilutive sources like monetizing our WhiteFiber stake. So, Bit Digital owns about 74% of WhiteFiber. So the shareholders of Bit Digital are getting exposure because we own the majority of WhiteFiber and we're locked up for 6 months. And in the future, as WhiteFiber becomes where we think it should be, we're able to sell down that position and use those proceeds as we see fit. And clearly that's going to go into, we want that to go into Ethereum. And so we have this trump card. No other ETH Treasury play has that trump card. So time is our friend. Sure, there are a couple of guys who are ahead of us in the race, but I don't know if you ever played the card game Uno, but there's a thing called reverse Uno. So that's something that we can easily do in the future. And so that's something that we really are very proud that we've done, and we've done this IPO. And let me tell you, doing an IPO is really much more work than you would ever imagine. But again, that heavy lifting is behind us, and we'll be reaping the rewards of that in the medium term. These things are not overnight. Rome was not built in a day. So people need to be patient.
It was great to pick up that little story from your conversation with Michael Saylor, because since that conversation, we've had the likes of Standard Chartered raise their Ethereum price to, I think, 7,500 by the end of the year, and something like 28,000, in the next 2 or 3 years' time. Which means, there's plenty of optimism for Ethereum now. It's had a fantastic run over the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks, where it's outperformed pretty much Bitcoin all over the place. And we've seen a lot more. I mean, you're right. You were one of the first, if not the first company to really have that Ethereum on the balance sheet from a company perspective. But this last 3 months has seen a lot more join the race now. And me and Bryce, we talk about the Bitcoin that's held on balance sheets, and now we're seeing a table of about 100 companies and how that changes week by week. And to get on that table, you have to have 50 Bitcoin. I mean, do you see the sort of same? Are you going to see the same level of number of companies that start holding Ethereum as well? I mean, we're still in the very early days, but we are seeing literally day by day another company coming out and saying we're going to start this process as well. And I know initially, Sam, you said it was going to be like a bit of a race to see who gets the most there. Is that still your competitive side talking, or you think actually it's just a case of let's gather as much Ethereum as we can, knowing what to expect over the next few years?
With respect to Bitcoin, there are just too many capital market proxies right now. There's just way too many. There are ETFs, there are Bitcoin miners, there are MSTR types. It's just too crowded. So I think that that has been played out. With Ethereum, that has not been played out. I'm happy to see, a bunch of announcements of people trying to be an ETH capital markets proxy. Why? Because that means they're buying Ethereum. What does that happens when you buy Ethereum? The price goes up. So it's this virtuous cycle, and there's a lot of catching up to do. Ethereum is now finally being understood by the masses. This is a position that I've taken for a very long time. It's finally playing out. We don't see this as a race for size alone. BitDigital already owns more than 120,000 ETH, which is one of the largest institutional positions in the public markets. We built that position through discipline, reallocating balance sheet capital, raising equity at premiums, and keeping the option to monetize our WhiteFiber stake over time. Some of these newer entrants are leaning on very large financing transactions, whether that's converts or equity raises. Our approach is different. It's measured, it's shareholder aligned. It doesn't rely on unnecessary leverage. And unlike most, we don't just hold our ETH, we stake the majority, the vast majority of our balance and generate on-chain yield. So that sets us apart and positions us to deliver long-term value. So this means that we don't just ride ETH, we put it to work, and I think that's a big differentiator. So you have that as a differentiator. We have WhiteFiber as a non-dilutive source of financing in the future that we can use to grow our ETH position. And this so-called race just started like very recently. So we have a long way to go. When you sprint out of a race, what that's meant to be a marathon, you can poop out really quickly. So we understand this is a marathon, and we think we'll win.
In terms of a lot of these companies, both in Ethereum and Bitcoin with Treasury, Treasury held, we were seeing quite a sizable premium given for some of the balances to start with. That just seems to be pulling back a little bit at the moment. Where do you see that over the sort of like the next 12 months? Because there has been quite a bit of volatility, not necessarily with strategy, but with some of the newer ones that have come onto the market, like you say, the copycat ones.
Look, so the whole ETH Treasury play and what MSTR does with Bitcoin, the strategy is pretty simple. It's similar to like oil companies. They always trade at a premium to their known oil deposits. Why? Because the markets expect that they're going to find more oil in the future. And that's why they trade to a premium to their known oil discoveries. So it's the same thing with Bitcoin or ETH treasury plays. People expect there's a reason why it trades at a premium because in a way, shareholders are kind of front running these treasuries because they think, okay, they realize that the treasury companies are going to buy more in the future, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum. And so that's why it trades at a premium. So it's kind of a conceptual front running, not illegal though. So it's a perception of how fast and or how measure or how responsibly. In our case, we want to responsibly grow and not blow ourselves up. Yeah, I just think Bitcoin mining is a business that basically is not a good narrative for the capital markets because they're catching on to how terrible that business is. And it was considered blasphemous when I said that a couple of years ago and last year, and now people are beginning to accept it. It's just not a good business. And the capital markets, people aren't stupid. The institutions realize that it's not sustainable. So I think that if you have a Bitcoin mining business, even if you have like an MSTR strategy, I know some Bitcoin miners out there are trying to do MSTR types, but they're labeled as Bitcoin miners. And so the labeling and the categorization as a Bitcoin miner is not good. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get out of it completely and simplify our story. We are simply an ETH treasury play, right? WhiteFiber is simply an HPC digital infrastructure play. You have to keep it pure play and simple. Although we have, the ace card in our sleeves with having, 74% ownership of WhiteFiber as a source of financing in the long-term future, and we can use that to finance our way to being top at the ETH play. But again, this is a marathon.
Hey, speaking of simplifying the business structure there, the next question we had was about the management of these companies. We would imagine, obviously, with the exit of the Bitcoin mining business, there would be less need for staffing on that side. I know Bit Digital did a lot of hosting, and you're looking to spin that out. I would imagine some of the staff will flow into WhiteFiber as well. But can you give us an update on the management, and if you're able to comment on your position as CEO of both companies, or if that may change over time as well?
Yeah, so an ETH Treasury company runs lean. The focus is basically on accounting, compliance, capital allocation, staking operations. That requires far fewer people than mining or AI. So that lets us stay efficient on the Bit Digital side. So staffing is really centered on blockchain specialists who optimize validators, generate yield, support the ecosystem participation, really simple stuff. And as we disclosed in the S1, I will serve as CEO of both Bit Digital and WhiteFiber. The transition services agreement ensures that my time and my costs are allocated appropriately between the two companies. But the most important thing is that WhiteFiber has extremely seasoned operational leaders that are running its business lines day to day. These executives on the WhiteFiber side, they bring decades and decades of experience in developing tier three data centers and cloud and AI infrastructure. So this allows WhiteFiber to execute independently, while I focus on overall strategy and alignment at the top. We'll continue to evaluate what leadership structure best supports both companies, but there's no change from what's been publicly disclosed.
In terms of financial reporting, Sam, I mean, I'm assuming both companies report separately, but Bit Digital will actually have the combination of effectively Bit Digital and its subsidiary, which is not a minority interest. As you say, it's close to 75% ownership. So all the revenues will be shown, through the Bit
Yeah,
Digital.
we have to consolidate our finances because we own a majority of WhiteFiber. That's the rule.
Yeah. Okay.
Makes sense. Hey, another question we had from the audience, actually. You recently made some public purchases of both Bit Digital shares and Wi-Fi shares, along with another senior director at Bit Digital, which is obviously great to see from the retail investment community. We've seen and heard from other management teams that this is not necessarily possible, especially during periods of immense change or a lot of things happening with the company. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you made the decision to do this and what kind of restrictions or limitations at a more general level are on a CEO doing that?
Yeah, so I purchased my shares to align my interests directly with shareholders and to reflect my confidence in our long-term strategy. I was criticized once for not buying, and now I'm being criticized for buying. These purchases were made during open trading windows, following blackout periods, and in full compliance with SEC rules and our insider trading policy. At Bit Digital, I've bought shares to demonstrate my conviction in our strategy and to align directly with shareholders. At WhiteFiber, I also participated in the IPO allocation. In both cases, the process was very straightforward, very transparent, and fully within regulatory guidelines. But at the end of the day, my purchases reflect confidence in the strategy and the long-term value that we're building.
In terms of the actual, you say that when the time frame enables you to purchase, so outside of any periods, is there any sort of like, can you make a decision on a day to say, actually, I'm going to buy some shares today during that period,
No.
or do you have to give notice and a time period in advance?
Yeah, no, I can't just buy in the open market whenever I want to. That is not appropriate. There are like a lot of rules with respect to open trading windows and blackout periods, and you have to comply with a bunch of SEC rules. It's one of the reasons why I wasn't really able to do it in the past. but now is finally able to do it with certain transactions. And sometimes it's frustrating because I've been wanting to buy shares for a long time. So I finally did.
Hey, I know we've covered a lot of ground here today, Sam. A tremendous period of change and growth for both of these organizations. We wanted to give you the opportunity to close out, leave us with kind of your parting thoughts or how this narrative should sound now in people's mind.
Look, as I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. People need to be patient. I understand traders are not patient. Shareholders, investors are. What we're building, what I'm building is with very talented people on the team is enduring. We're very careful. We don't take on crazy amounts of expensive debt. We never have. And when we do so, if we do so, it'll be done in a very responsible way to catapult us. So look, we've built the foundation of both companies. Bit Digital is now a pure play Ethereum company. We've started years ago, and now we're going to accelerate. And WhiteFiber is a pure play digital infrastructure company. And the team on that company has more years of experience and an incredible track record of success in doing this. They're not just making things up along the way. And I'm very excited for what's to come. And you guys will. I hope you guys will get us as excited as I am when developments are discussed in the future.
Yeah, we certainly will be. You're a pioneer in the space. We're here cheering you on from the sidelines. We're looking forward to when we can have you back on the program after the quiet period and give you some questions on WhiteFiber as well. But we appreciate the time today. Thanks so much for the transparency. If you guys have any additional questions, comments, leave them in the section below. Hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you back here shortly.